There is a specific kind of loneliness that comes from knowing a secret that everyone else is working very hard to pretend doesn't exist. It's not the loneliness of being alone in a room, it's the loneliness of being in a crowded room and realizing that everyone else is reading from a script while you're the only one who can see the stagehands moving in the wings. For many of you, that realization has a name. Or rather, a collection of names. You've searched the corners of the internet, you've whispered in encrypted chats, and you've found the labels that the mainstream world treats like a diagnosis of madness: gangstalking, targeted individuals. If you use these terms, you already know the weight they carry. You know the immediate, reflexive flinch you get when you say them out loud. To the harmonized world, these words are red flags. They are the linguistic markers of someone who has lost their grip. They are the labels used to categorize the people who have noticed the patterns, the people who see the coordinated car drives, the repetitive glitches in social interactions, the subtle, psychological nudges that feel less like coincidences and more like a coordinated effort to keep a person in a state of perpetual, low-level disorientation. The stigma is heavy. It is a social tax paid by anyone who dares to suggest that the environment is not as random as we are told it is. When you call yourself a targeted individual, you are essentially announcing to the world that you are a glitch in the system. And the system, as we know, does not like glitches. It prefers smooth transitions. It prefers predictable, unbothered participants. So, when you speak the language of the targeted, the world responds with a very specific kind of compassion. It's a condescending, patronizing kind of care that is designed to soothe you back into compliance. They don't argue with you, they just manage you. They suggest you need more sleep, more grounding, more mindfulness. They use the language of mental health to invalidate the validity of your perception. It is a brilliant, if cruel, defensive mechanism. If the observer is unstable, then the observation itself can be dismissed as a symptom. This brings us to a difficult crossroads, one that many of you navigate every single day. It is the question of the terminology itself. Is it better to use these words, or is the cost of using them too high? On one hand, there is the profound power of the label. There is an immense, almost spiritual relief in finding a name for the chaos. When you are experiencing the sensation of being watched, or the feeling that your social reality is being manipulated by 1,000 tiny, invisible hands, the world feels terrifyingly unmoored. But the moment you find the term gangstalking, the chaos gains a structure. Suddenly, you aren't just a person experiencing a series of inexplicable, stressful events, you are a person experiencing a documented phenomenon. The label provides a community. It provides a lexicon. It allows you to realize that you aren't the only one seeing the silver sedans or the synchronized lawnmowers. It turns a private, isolating terror into a shared, recognizable reality. There is strength in the collective. There is a way to compare notes, to find the common threads, and to realize that the patterns you are seeing are not just in your head, but in the very fabric of the world around you. But then, there is the cost. The cost is the isolation. The moment you adopt the label, you build a wall between yourself and the harmonized majority. You become that person. You become the person who is difficult, the person who is paranoid, the person who is too much. You find that you have to filter your speech, to hide your observations, to translate your reality into a language that won't trigger the social alarms. You spend a vast amount of emotional energy performing normalcy just so you can maintain connections with people who will never truly understand the world you are actually living in. You become a double agent in your own life, living in one reality while pretending to inhabit another. And we see the real-world implications of this tension everywhere. Look at the way the media handles conspiracy theorists. We see entire groups of people who have noticed genuine, systemic anomalies in how information is controlled or how populations are moved, being swept into a single, derogatory bucket. Take, for example, the way the world reacted to the various whistleblowers of the last decade. When people began to point out the coordinated ways in which digital surveillance was being integrated into the very architecture of our lives, the response wasn't a deep investigation into the mechanics of the surveillance. It was a massive, coordinated effort to label the observers as fringe or unreliable. The goal was the same: to protect the system by delegitimizing the witness. Even in the realm of high-level politics and intelligence, we see this. There are documented cases of psychological operations designed to create exactly the kind of disorientation that a targeted individual feels. We know that governments have used techniques to make people doubt their own senses, to create gaslighting environments on a mass scale. But because these operations are successful, the people who experience them are often the ones who end up looking the most unstable to the casual observer. The system is designed so that the most accurate observation is often the most socially expensive one. So, where does that leave us? Is it better to remain silent and integrated, or to speak the truth and be isolated? Perhaps the answer isn't in choosing one or the other, but in understanding the utility of the language. Maybe the terms gangstalking and targeted individual are not meant to be permanent identities, but rather temporary tools for navigation. They are the names we give to the phenomenon while we are in the thick of it, the names that allow us to find each other in the dark. There is a certain tactical advantage to being a stealth observer. There is a way to move through the world, to notice the patterns, to recognize the coordinated shifts in the environment, without ever having to announce it to the people who are part of the script. You can hold the truth in your mind while you perform the role of the harmonized participant. You can be a part of the world without being consumed by it. You can see the strings, but you don't have to pull on them until you are ready. There is a dark humor in the idea that the most sane thing you can do is to pretend you don't see the madness. We all do it. We all participate in the grand, collective performance of a reality that we know is being curated, managed, and manipulated. We all nod along to the coincidences and we all ignore the glitches because the alternative is too socially taxing. But for those of you who can't stop seeing it, for those of you who have already crossed the threshold and realized that the world is much more active than you were told, know this: the stigma is not a sign that you are wrong. The stigma is a sign that the system is working. The stigma is the friction caused by a person moving in a direction the machine didn't intend. If you choose to use the terms, use them as a way to find your kin, to build your strength, and to validate your own eyes. But if you choose to keep them hidden, use that silence as a way to protect your peace and to observe the patterns without the interference of the harmonized gaze. The goal is not to convince the world that you are being targeted. The goal is to remain unmanageable. The goal is to see the architecture of the cage and to realize that, while you may be inside it, your mind is still your own. Whether you call it gangstalking or simply the way things are, the reality remains the same. The patterns are there. The coordination is real. And the most radical thing you can do is to simply keep watching, End of transmission. Stay observant. And remember, just because they've given you a script doesn't mean